This is a show about jewelry, why we wear it, why it matters, how it's made, and what it means. I'm Alex D, and I turn cannabis into gold. I make mind-blowing jewelry in gold, silver, and platinum from cannabis plants here in Canada for stage, screen, for people who want to rock crazy jewelry. I'm the cannabis goldsmith. I haven't heard any trucks go across the bridge in a long time. The traffic going into the USA for trade is definitely slowing right down. It's, everything has changed. But that's not why I'm here. I can't sleep. I'm up early in the morning. It's 2 a.m. on Saturday. It's raining out and I couldn't sleep. So I went out and I sat on the porch and I lit up a joint. It's great. It was raining, a little bit of rain coming down on the tin roof of the woodshed. Just a beautiful, relaxing spring evening. Just fantastic. But I couldn't sleep. And the reason why I couldn't sleep is that I've broken up with Swisher, and I just, like on Friday, I just couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't take it anymore. It's affected me a lot, and I'll explain why in this. This is going to be a Dear Kara podcast, and then I'll talk about some art stuff at the end. But first, I'm a little down because I've had these realizations. You know, if you're in a relationship with somebody, and I'm not in a relationship with Kara, I'm not saying that. I am. I'm in a podcast listener relationship with her. But what I'm saying is, if you've been in a relationship with someone and all of a sudden something happens in it, there's something is off, and you start a process called stacking. Somebody told me once it's stacking, and it's like stacking coins, right? Or stacking poker chips on a table. And what it is the first thing you notice is that they pick their nose. And they always pick their nose, but you just noticed it now, right? For some reason. And that's the first chip on the table. And then you don't really like that, but you wonder why you never noticed it before. And then you see the way they eat is kind of strange, like the way they chew with their mouth open, and this is kind of you really hadn't noticed that before, but because you're involved with them, and the rainbow glasses maybe I don't know what it is. But then another chip stacks on top of the other one, and then it's something else, and all these little things. And eventually this stack of chips, of coins, gets so high, it tips over, and the relationship is done. It's finished. Now, this stacking idea applies, it applies at any scale, from the tiny two-person relationship to a country-to-country relationship. The idea of stacking happens. Like the world is stacking against the United States right now. And the reason why is their president is they voted in this complete nut job, and he's destroying the world. He's hell-bent on destroying the world. He's destroying the world economy. We all know what he's doing, right? Everyone knows what he's doing, but the Americans are not stopping it. They're not standing up to him. So we all know what he's doing. So I'm not going to talk about that. But with each of his actions, like another coin stacks up on the table, and it's well past the point, in Europe anyway, where the stack of coins or chips has fallen over, and there's no way to put it back. It's like, it takes to put it back is gonna in some order. And if you do, all that evidence of malfeasance is still there, right? So the world is falling away from the United States very quickly. Very quickly. Now, this is going to come into play later in my Dear Kara podcast here today. But anyway, about my relationship with Kara, I'm a tech person at heart here in Canada. I'm one of the oldest or earliest tech people in Canada, oddly enough. I started a magazine, a print magazine in Canada in the early 90s, which coincided with the launch of the World Wide Web. We were the first in the country online, Tribe magazine. I've always, even before that, I had a BBS. So we were the first probably magazine in Canada with a BBS, and then converted that into a website using Mark Andreessen's Netscape, building pages with that, right? Like that's how far back, it was like prehistoric, using tools, stone tools and implements basically on the internet. So I go way back, but Kara does too. And that's how I ran across her stuff, because I kept seeing her stuff. She was interviewing early tech people, following them in their careers all the way up to I guess maybe a year ago when they stopped talking to her, or 2 years ago or something, when they all, or maybe it was just when the new president got elected, and they all just they were all up on stage there, clapping. So I followed her stuff and grew to respect her journalism. She's a wonderful journalist, a great journalist. I consider her a mentor. And during the heydays of Twitter, I would comment on some of her shows, and she would respond to me or retweet me sometimes, retweet my stuff sometimes, which was always a joy to me. But that's not why I was doing it, because whenever I send somebody a letter or something, and I sent the King Charles III a letter about his support for the U.S. president. I sent him a complaint letter. Well, I'll send people letters or emails or whatever. I'll send them a complaint, or I'll give them props if what they're doing is fantastic. I appreciated her work, and I would tell people about her content. Listen to the Pivot Show, listen to the Prof G Show. I even mentioned it on this show. I said, these are the shows that I listen to. I listen to this basket of shows. Most of them are actually left-wing, or considered left-wing shows. Yeah, so this is how I know her. And I grew to consider her a mentor. I sort of looked up to her. She was on the same sort of trajectory as I was, but me on a much smaller scale and in my own niche here in Canada. That's just to say how I met her. And I've never met her in person, but I've met her through her content and engagement over her content and my content. So anyway, on Friday, the stacking has started to happen against Kara and her content since the Trump election. Since November. It started to change. Her content has started to change. And her show On, which I don't listen to now at all, seemed to be all book reviews. It's like, oh, you've got a new book out called blah, blah, blah. Tell me about this. Tell me about that. No real interest in it. Just it like advertorials. And I think I sent her a tweet or probably it never reached her or whatever. But I said, look, these are these book reviews now or what? Like, come on. And so the content was starting to suffer. And then the Pivot Show, which I've been a listener to that show since the very first show. Like, I've been a huge fan of this show. I refer to myself as Kara's biggest Canadian fan. This is how much I love her and her content. Until Friday. The Pivot podcast is becoming nothing but banter. There's no news there. And the reason why I think there's no news there is because all those tech bros are on the front row next to Trump. They're not talking to her anymore. And I bet anyone any tech bros who are going to try and talk to her now could get thrown in jail, right? By their new leadership in the United States. They voted this lunatic in. So, well, they have to deal with it now, I suppose, right? All her sources are drying up in the tech world. Nobody's going to talk to her of any import, and none of the top 5 guys or whatever who are on that stage, they're not going to do interviews with her ever again. And I'm sure she's concerned that she might even get thrown in jail if it gets worse there, if she gets too critical. Because she was actually absolutely eviscerated Elon's mother, like going after his mother, like anyway. But let's go back to her content. So I noticed the content was starting to get worse. Not in tone, but it just became weaker since November. I mean, I just realized why now when I was sitting out in the rain, why it's weaker is that her sources have been cut off. There's no tech for her to cover anymore. What is she going to cover? She's in this predicament now where they're covering is stuff that they're getting. People are paying them to put on their shows. That's all it is. It's pay to play. And it used to be a source of information, and now it's essentially an advertorial. But the last chip falling on the stack was Friday when she... fuck, man. I'm still, I don't believe this. Scott was saying, we had Mark Carney, our candidate for Prime Minister of Canada. We're in an election cycle. This is a very close election. The two leaders, Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney, are very close in the polls. The election's very tight here. So now here we have, on Friday, we have Scott Galloway saying how fabulous Mark Carney is on his show Pivot, because he just interviewed him on his other show, the Prof G show. I haven't listened to that show, and I'm not going to listen to that show with Mark Carney because it's a paid advertorial. But anyway, that's not what pissed me off. What pissed me off is what Cara insulted Pierre's French-Canadian name on the Pivot show. Here they are propping up Mark Carney, a foreigner who doesn't even live in Canada, who's running to be our prime minister. All right? He lives in New York. Maybe that's why she's propping him up. Maybe that's why Scott's propping him up. They're millionaires, and he is God knows what he is, because he won't reveal his financial backing or anything in his financial status, as was revealed in the election debate a few days ago here in Canada. It turns out that Carney was in China just before the election was called and got a $250 million loan from Beijing. Now I wonder if any of that money paid for his appearance on the Prof G show. These are the things that we must consider. But let's back up a bit about Cara insulting a person's French-Canadian name here. Fuck you, Cara. That was the last chip falling on this stack. You know what? You're an American, and you have no right to tell us who to vote for here in Canada. Neither of you do. Prof G or your team or any of the you little clutch of liberals who are looking for content now that your own liberal government has been destroyed. Don't come up here and try and import your baloney into Canada to influence don't try and influence the outcome of our election. I immediately I unsubscribed from Pivot. Immediately. What is she doing? Mentor? Yes, she was my mentor, but not anymore. Now she seems like some kind of looking to influence the election in a foreign outcome of an election in a foreign country. What the fuck? Seriously, what the fuck? And Scott, your show with Mark Carney, that's an advertorial for the Liberal Party. Your relationship with G0 Media, you have Ian Bremmer on every 2 weeks or whatever. Now, the guy, Evan Solomon, the guy that works for him, is running as an MP, a Liberal MP in the Toronto area. All you guys are all paid. It's so obvious there are there's stuff going on, and it should be disclosed during a podcast. You should be disclosing that all these relationships with G0 Media and how much Mark Carney paid you to be on his show, or what other considerations you're going to get in the future for having done it. Because you see, this guy has relationships with all kinds of massive financial corporations that he won't disclose to the Canadian people. He might even be the prime minister of our country in a few days, and nobody knows who's funding him. Nobody knows where the money's coming from, but we do know he was in Beijing just before the election and got $250 million loan for a company that he was running. Now, all this stuff, the average Pivot listener has no idea. They just hear that, oh, Kara supports Mark Carney because that other guy, that Pierre, whatever his name is a Trumpian. You know what? He's not Trumpian. He's absolutely not. The only candidate Trump supports in our election is your guy, Mark Carney. Trump has gone on the record saying that he endorses Mark Carney. Like, here's the thing. When you guys had your election, I never told you who to vote for. I never told you what governor or senator or presidential candidate to vote for. I never did. I talk about your politics, but I never tell you who to vote for. So fuck you, you know? You don't deserve to be my mentor after Friday. Neither of you, actually. And then when the stack falls over, what happens in a relationship of any kind or any scale, what happens is you suddenly you see all the times in the past when they did that or when they did this, and this is when you know for sure the relationship is over. So I started seeing all these oh God, these guests, these that were paid guests. This is so-and-so from this company, whatever, you know. He's like just the most boring fucking thing and banter. It just dick jokes and all that. All that is great. You know, it's fun and entertaining. And the serious component of the show was getting smaller and smaller. The shows were getting smaller and smaller, and the entertainment and Hollywood component is getting bigger and bigger. And now, okay, let's move away from the Kara thing. I'm over her now, so I'm going to try and analyze why. And the funny thing is, I listened to this other podcast, which is called People versus Algorithms. And I believe it's a bunch of kind of tech people, advertising people, predominantly advertising media people, talking about what's happening in the media space, trying to understand what's happening in the media space and how it differs from Pivot. It has banter, but the ideas are not paid for by corporations. It's not advertorial. You're listening to it, and these are guys, smart guys trying to figure out what the hell is going on. 3 of them. There's Brian Morrissey, who I believe was an ad journalist. There's Troy Young. I think he comes from a publishing side. And then there's this guy, Alex Schaefer, who has like a tech background and an AI background. He seems very smart. But anyway, he came up with coined this word, hyperpunditry. That these shows Kara's a hyper pundit. Scott Galloway is a hyper pundit. It's a new form of media. It's a new type of media entity, the hyper pundit. They can talk about anything on the Canadian election or on baking apple pies. They can be absolutely convincing about whether you should sprinkle flowers on your omelet that you've cooked on your $20,000 stove, or whether you should give money to the poor. They are the hyper pundits. They have no boundaries. They can comment on whatever they want, and they have huge platforms to do it with. Now, this is Kara and Scott. There's more of them out there. But suddenly I realized that's what they were too. They were these hyper pundits. They have no chops. Kara's not a Canadian. She has no fucking right to tell me who to vote or whatever. Scott Galloway has no authority to tell me anything, right? These are just advertising products from corporations or themselves, right? Kara apparently has said that she earns $20 million a year from podcasting. So good for her, you know? Great. Yeah, great. But that's not why she was my mentor. You know, she was my mentor for the quality of her content, but not anymore. But anyway, these guys on People versus Algorithms, I listened to this show after the Pivot Show, and it crystallized everything in my brain. It was like, wow, yeah, this is right. Hyper punditry. There are these media platforms. It doesn't have to be like 100 people in an office. It can be like 3 people on a podcast, and they dominate these eyeballs. And because they do, they think they can talk about anything, right? And they bring on these guests who claim to support something or other. Who knows what? They're there because the guest is paid to be on, right? This is hyper punditry. But then further to that idea, it's like, why is hyper punditry here? And why is it suddenly here? And the reason it's suddenly here is that the U.S. media space has been destroyed. After the Trump election, he went after ABC. He got them to pay him $4 million. He's suing them left, right, and center. They're laying off all their staff. It turns out that NBC might not be around in 2 months. They're all collapsing. The whole left Democratic media ecosystem has collapsed. It's collapsed, and they've had the rug pulled out from under them. Scott Galloway and Kara Swisher are there. They've had the rug pulled out from under them. They're living in a country now that is fast on its way to becoming a banana republic. Because of that, they have no authority to tell anybody anything, right? Nothing. What authority do they have? They must really focus on saving their own country instead of trying to influence the voting in other foreign countries, in other countries. In my country, they mustn't do that. I won't stand for it. So the ecosystem, the democratic media, the whole ecosystem that's tried to get Biden reelected, all the reporters, all the newspapers, it was all like the blob, they called it, I think. This huge, giant entity of different things working together. Ezra Klein was one of these people. And Ezra Klein actually described it in one of his podcasts. He said, I thought looking at America that they were all working together towards a goal. But they're not. They're loosely organized towards a goal. And that's their problem. They're loosely organized. They don't have the organization that their opponents have in the United States. And that's why they're now irrelevant in media, pretty much. So all these journalists, many who are very, very talented, well, like Kara, right? And people like that, and newer guys like Scott coming in as a journalist, they have nothing to do. They'll do a whole deep dive on bourbon production or something. God knows what they'll be doing now, because the United States is the laughing stock of the world. And another piece of advice, a good piece of advice I got, I can't remember who gave it. Maybe even Scott Galloway on one of his podcasts said it. Never listen to clowns. And you too are clowns when it comes to talking about Canada. That's all I got to say. But Kara, it's been a great run. I was almost devastated on Friday. I was like, God, no. It was such a good relationship. But now, until you straighten yourselves out down there, you're just toxic, man. You're toxic. So the thing to look for in Canadian or even in Australian or UK politics, you got to watch these Americans coming in to try and influence your culture or election, because their culture's destroyed and destroying, and they don't seem to be doing anything to save their own culture. So now they're looking for shit to do. They're going to be coming in and trying to influence our own culture in the UK and Australia, Canada. They're coming. We're close, right? So now Karen, Scott are trying to do influence our election. No. Fix your own goddamn country. Stay away. Go away. You toxic clowns. The stacking is happening all around the world. America's being left behind. Each day, the American government threatens other countries, breaks agreements, backtracks, lies, sends people away to third countries, to internment camps. All this, your country is turning into like a banana republic. Everyone in the world can see that. So you must open your eyes and look around you before you start telling other people what to do. So that's it. That's my... I feel better. It was a rant, but it was a rant from the heart and a deeply felt rant. You know what? They're all full of shit. When I'm listening to the American content now, just think they're full of shit. Somebody's paying them. Somebody's trying to get this content in front of you, into your ears, in a podcast in front of your eyes. Somebody's paying for that message to be blasted into your eyes. Who is paying for it? The sponsors are paying for it. Who's paying for the guest? The book publisher is paying for the guest. Who's paying for the tech bro sitting there talking about his AI company? Yep, you guessed it. Goodbye, Kira. I'll miss you, but whatever. I'll be much healthier without you. And Scott as well. Now, I've been onto the art stuff. I've been thinking more and more about video. Doing a video podcast. And I'll tell you why. And it's not to make Mark Zuckerberg happy or any of the tech bros, because this is what they want. They want you to make more complex things to put on their platforms for free so that their AIs can scrape and learn from, and they can resell, repackage, sell ads against. This is what they want to do. And they make you, you're going to have to put more videos on in order to get more traffic, And I haven't done that on purpose because I didn't want to do the work for Mark Zuckerberg. Somebody said last week, well, actually I started noticing I was getting emails from publicists. Oh, we loved your show. We loved your show. The how you blend culture and commerce together, and international trade, how you talk about how you can take care of yourself with art, and how you do all the stuff. And we have this guy, Eric Bonderschnooz or whatever, who has mastered AI, clean AI technology, and would like to, he would be an awesome guest on your show. And I like, what the fuck? Clean AI technology? My show's not about that. So why am I getting this suddenly? And I just got other ones just unrelated. And turns out the publicists who are continuously trying to get guests on podcasts have now seen my podcast, and now they're looking to get guests on my podcast. And the thing is, I don't have guests on my podcast. I wouldn't have Mark Carney on my podcast if he came. So yeah, I started getting these publicists contacting me to get shit on my podcast, and I'm the Cannabis Goldsmith. I'm thinking, wow, this is strange. And then I got an email from another guy. Yeah, my show now. This show is the top four. It's number 4 in jewelry design podcasts in the world. Like, this was so shocking to me. I was like, no, you're kidding, right? No. He said, your show, The Cannabis Goldsmith, is number 4 in jewelry design podcasts in the world. And this to me is a joy, because I wasn't aiming for that at all. I was just aiming to do a little show coming out of Upper Canada here along the St. Lawrence River from an actual artist from a design studio, and broadcasting from here. And that's what I'm doing, and talking about an artist's life a lot, right next to the border, right next to the Americans where I live here, and what that means, and what it means for our country and our culture and our people and our design and our art. And this is what I wanted to do a show about, just a kind of a random show, but based in Upper Canada, and this is what the show has become. I was so pleased to hear it's number 4. Now, let me tell you, there's some big jewelry shows out there. They're big, funded by big money. This is not funded by big money. This is funded by no money. It's me talking and talking about my practice, right? So I'm so pleased with that. I'm no Prof G Media or whatever, but I don't want to be either, right? I don't want a plane. I don't want a fucking plane. I want to be real. I want to be authentic. Yeah, I'm thinking video. Yeah, let's do video. Maybe I can do a little bit of video now. And I'm not doing it to increase my number on the chart, in the podcast chart or what. I don't even know where the podcast chart is, to be honest with you. I don't know. But anyway, I'm not doing it. If I do it, it'll be as a creative challenge to see if I can make shooting video from a bench interesting. That's the reason I would do it. And if it wasn't interesting, I don't think I would show it. So that's that. Anyway, that's it for me this week. I'm recording this. I was so upset that I couldn't sleep. I recorded this show. It's now over. I feel a little bit better. And perhaps what I'll do is see if it's still raining, go sit outside for a bit longer and enjoy that, and then go back to sleep. See you next week. The Cannabis Goldsmith is produced by Tribe Communications, Inc. in the Thousand Islands area of Ontario, Canada. We recorded in our studio in southeastern Ontario along the St. Lawrence River, where we can see America across the river. Subscribe to the Cannabis Goldsmith wherever you get your podcasts. Follow the show and tell your fellow artist friends about it. It's the only artist podcast coming to you right from a studio every Wednesday morning. We'll see you next week on the Cannabis Goldsmith. Oh, if you want to reach me, send me an email, alexd@cannabisgoldsmith.com. Thanks for listening.